Hey guys, welcome back to THU TV. We're going to chat to Ben Mauro in a minute. Hi Ben,
Hey.
how you doing?
Good.
But before we get into that, I just want to tell you guys about THU TV, which you can sign up to. Go to the Trojan Horse website. It's trojan-unicorn.com/TV. And, you know, it's pretty cool. There's all these shows being made here deliberately, specifically for THU TV. It costs you €59. It's a pretty cool thing. I sort of describe it like Netflix for concept design, art, visual effects, animation. That's the kind of shows you'll get out of THU TV. So I hope you go to the website and check it out. These conversations I've been having this week are free. They've been streaming all week, and you'll be able to access those too. So anyway, Ben, hi again.
Hey.
For those of you out there who don't know Ben, maybe you could tell us a bit about yourself and where you got started and right up to what you've been doing recently.
Sure. I went to study industrial design and entertainment design at Art Center in Pasadena. Then I started working in games and films. Went down to Weta Workshop for about 4 years, working on the Hobbit movies, Elysium, Chappie, and a whole bunch of movies. And then went independent, started freelancing for games like Call of Duty, and most recently Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets for the last couple of years full time.
Because I want to talk to you mostly about Valerian.
Sure.
But I also had this idea that I don't think many people get to talk about, which is these films and games, hundreds of people work on them, and what is that feeling like of working on something for months and months and then finally seeing it up on the screen or finally seeing it in a video game? You know, what is that like? You've obviously had a lot of those experiences. Mm-hmm. Is it hard to watch a film or play a game that you've been part of?
Sometimes. I mean, I think a lot of it in the past, I could maybe watch a movie one time. I don't know, it's hard. It's like listening to a recording of your voice because you've been there the whole time and you know you've been spending so much time and looking at this stuff for years, and then you kind of see it and you kind of, I don't know, it's hard to like looking at like listening, you just hear imperfections or see imperfections. You're like, how did that happen, or why is it this way, not that way? And because you imagine it, how it's going to turn out when you're working on it, and then it's kind of interesting to see it all put together in the end. And but it's definitely interesting. On some of the earlier projects, we were more cut off, so we're kind of do design work, and then it's like you said, like a year or two later, we just see it in the cinema. There's like a big gap. On Valerian, though, I was pretty involved up till the end, so I was seeing some early VFX stuff and was on set watching them film and stuff. So that made that experience really cool because I really wanted to be involved towards the end, and Luke allowed me to just be as involved as I would like to be. And but each experience is a little different, and it's always interesting to see how it is when you're working on it and then how it ends up in the final.
Okay, so before I want to ask you about how you came on board Valerian and what that experience was like. But when it came out in the middle of the year, where did you see it? How did you arrange to watch it?
I saw it originally. I saw some early footage that they showed at Comic-Con a couple years ago, and then I saw it officially at the LA premiere at the Chinese Theater, and so that was really cool.
Yeah.
Get to see it with Luke and the cast and everyone, and so that was really fun.
Okay. And, you know, here we go. This is a big Luc Besson film in production for a long time, related to the great work of
Mézières.
Yep. Yeah. And everyone who's seen Fifth Element will have also seen the inspiration there. How did you come on board the show?
He found some of my work that I did as a student, and I was in New Zealand at the time just kind of getting started, but I loved his work, so I kind of worked weekends and nights to do some early work for the film for a couple of months, and this was like in 2010-11, and then it kind of went on hold for a couple of years, and I kind of kept in touch, and he had me work on Lucy in between, and I didn't think it would ever come back, and then finally it was like, I think a lot of other films like Guardians of the Galaxy were starting to come out, and I was like, come on, let's do this. Like, it's perfect time. Like,
Yeah.
everyone's getting back into these big sci-fi movies, and I think Lucy did so well that he was just like, okay, let's do this, and we got started full time shortly after Lucy did really well, and just kind of went full time for a couple years till it was finished.
And did you move to Paris, or were you able
I-
to do this from somewhere else?
I was freelancing while I was traveling, but I did go move to Paris for about a year. But they never forced me to. Like, I totally could have just been wherever, but I was just enjoying the project so much that I really wanted to be there and be on set and see it all come together.
Yeah.
Just because usually on all the other projects I was so cut off from that part of it, and I felt like that was that missing piece that I still haven't experienced yet, and I really wanted to just understand a bit more on how the film is made and put together and stuff. And again, Luke's really cool about just the door's open and it's up to you. If you want to go in, he'll let you in. If you don't want to go in, he's okay with that. And
Right.
So it was really cool.
So, what sort of team did he bring on as part of design and concept? And
Yeah, it was mostly mostly French team. There was Patrice Garcia, who was one of the original Fifth Element artists, Sylvain Despretz, who's kind of a legendary French concept designer, Marc Simonetti, and there's a couple other French artists, I can't remember their name,
Yeah.
but that was pretty much the team working on that for the bulk of the project. And
Right.
but it was cool. It was a very small group of artists doing a whole lot of stuff, which is exactly the experience I wanted. Usually on the other projects I've worked on, there's hundreds of artists, and there's like, for one creature, there's like 10 artists just doing eyeball variations, and at the end of the project, it's like, I did the eyeball on that creature, and then someone else did the fingernail, and then someone else did this part of the pattern or something. But
Yeah.
it was really satisfying to have just like a really small group of people, and you can really own, like, I did these 7 characters all in this whole sequence of a movie. And so as a artistic achievement for me, that was like one of the highest things I've always wanted to do.
In terms of specific things, were you basically designing everything, or characters, or the world, or
Yeah, my hands kind of touched a bit of everything on the film.
Right.
It was kind of, we were all kind of working in isolation for probably over a year. We didn't know who was on the project. We didn't see anyone's work, and on one level, it was really stressful because you're like, am I doing good? Is any of this even going? Is he happy with this?
Yeah.
But after the year, I think he started to lift the curtain a little bit and just like, oh, check this out, and would start to say, oh, I'm having Mark do something, or so it was. I think it was really good though, because it just made sure each of us was doing the most original work. And typically on films, if you're in an art department, someone will do something and the director likes it, and then everyone's like, okay, I'm going to do that too, and people stop exploring new ideas. And so it was definitely the most kind of creatively challenging but exciting experience as well.
what was a part of the world or a character that you were sort of most proud of or most challenging? I'd love to ask you about the Pearl, for
Sure.
example.
Yeah. There's a lot of early exploration stuff that I really loved that I don't think made it in the film, but a lot of the early aliens that come out at the beginning montage I really liked. Even though they're in there for like a second, there were some really funky original stuff that I thought was cool. The pearls were very fun to create as well. Luke had a pretty clear idea about what he wanted, but it was fun to kind of lock that down. He really wanted this kind of almost like a Maasai tribe, but kind of reverse, like inverted. So they're pale, pearlescent skin with sort of cephalopod kind of changing pattern on their skin. And he actually, the ear design was quite different, and that was actually one of his things. I think he cut out pieces of paper and kind of cut them out and was like, I kind of like this. And he kind of held up the drawing. I was like, yeah, that works really good. And I just kind of put that into the design, and that was
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
So it's cool. He was quite involved and a little more old school, like always printing out pieces of paper and like scribbling over like maybe like this
Yeah.
or. Um, so it was very
I,
cool to
I
experience
really
that.
responded to them because I liked that they were obviously human-esque
Mm-hmm.
and almost supermodel-like, and in fact they've played in
Yeah,
performance
yeah.
capture ways and scanning ways as by supermodels, basically. But they're not. You know, they're clearly alien as well.
Sure.
How tough was that to, make it appear that they were human-esque but alien as well?
Well, he really wanted a very androgynous kind of look. Like you
Right.
can't tell if they're male or female. Kind of a very neutral gender kind of thing, and maybe just some flourishes in the costuming indicating if they're male or female. But um, I think I forgot your question.
No. I liked that it's almost like they couldn't have just been played by people on set.
Sure.
They
sure.
had to be computer generated,
Yeah.
but they had to throw back to some other kind of. I mean, this is a stage down the road, right? But I'm wondering if that comes into your design thinking as well.
A little bit. Like I knew generally, like some of the actors and actresses he cast, I had to integrate some of their features a little bit.
Right. So you
And I-
knew who would be playing some of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Not initially, but then later on, it's like, okay, we're hiring this actor or this model or something, and
Right.
I would do a version that's slightly influenced by their face, but I mean, they're like 8 foot tall aliens, so can't find like 58 foot tall androgynous models or something.
Another part of the Pearls is like their beach setting. And of course, that's such a contrast to the rest of the film, which is
Yeah.
either deserty landscapes or space. That must have been an interesting design thing, referencing
Yeah.
shells and beach and
Yeah,
whatnot.
it was really cool. And What a Digital did such an awesome job visualizing that.
Yeah.
We went back and forth quite a bit because the comic book is a bit more like jungle and stuff, and so we did more like a big dense forest or just straight beach, and it kind of went back and forth and ended up more just beach and the kind of shells and kind of like a Santorini looking
Yeah.
structures and things that Mark came up with, which was really nice, and yeah, just has a really unique look to it, and I think it works really well, especially in the context of the film. It's just very different.
That's an interesting point you make, which is you're on early because you're designing the film. How long did you stay on for, and what is that interaction that you continue to have during filming and post-production?
Most of it early on was just us working with Luke. We'd have a Skype session every week, and he would just give us a big list of stuff he wanted us to work on, and it was kind of up to us what we were most excited about to take a crack at.
Yeah.
And then once it was more later on and it got more into production, it was more like, okay, we need to figure this design out and less exploring. And then I think it helps though for me being that involved. Like when you're too cut off, it can be a little ambiguous. Like, okay, I'm drawing all this stuff, but how is it being used? And like it helps when I know like, okay, I have to do this design and it's going to that person. And if I don't do it this way, he can't build it or he can't interpret it correctly. And then you see the people build it and you see where it goes on set. So it just helps me at least understand the pipeline
Yeah.
and how everything's connected so that I can provide the best service and the best artwork and design work to make everything for everyone else down the line as smooth as possible, instead of just making some isolated cool picture and then leaving or something.
Yeah. But I mean, as say Weta Digital are doing the Pearl, do you get a chance to review that work? Do they call you up?
So that would have been.
I'm
I
not
guess
saying
that
you
would
should,
have been.
but, you
Would have
know.
been. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some instances where there's a few things like I kind of would have liked to been involved. Like there's just so many designs. Like
Yeah.
I would have loved to sculpt all of my designs in ZBrush and take them even further, but it's
Yeah.
just I'm only one person, and there's like 1,000 things that I did, and I can't. It's just not physically possible, and so it's always interesting though. Like some things that on earlier films I worked on that I really wanted to be involved, and then maybe it didn't turn out so great, and then other things where I was really hands off and it turned out way better than I
Right.
could have ever imagined. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the times on Valerian where I really wanted to be involved, but it just wasn't possible. I feel like everything turned out so much better than I could have imagined. So um, I think that worked out pretty good, especially all the Pearl stuff, like that Weta
Yeah.
Digital. They always seem to go above and beyond and make something really special.
What about the big market or the marketplace? That is a crazy
Yeah,
sequence.
that was
And what I loved about that was Luke had to like pre-visit, but with people, with students, and that sort of thing. But in the design phase, how did you get your head around how those two worlds would work and what would communicate Valerian being in those two worlds at the same time?
Like that was actually one of the first scenes he described to me like 7 years ago or whatever, and
Wow.
I remember him just saying that, describing that, and I'm just like, I've wanted to see this, like, but just imagine that like 7 years ago he had this idea,
Yeah.
and I know he had that idea way before that, so he's been waiting like so many years to finally see it, and no one has
Yeah.
done anything kind of similar to that in that
No.
time. So, um, but yeah, a lot of it was just like, okay, it's kind of this desert area, but everything they put on these classics, and it's kind of like VR, AR from stuff all over the galaxy, and yeah, a lot of it was just how wacky and crazy does he want this other thing to be, and it was just kind of exploring a lot of
Yeah.
different ideas. And
I mean, apart from the fact that you need to be in both worlds at the same time, and that's a shot by shot thing. There's a couple of fly throughs of the big market. I'm just curious, like when you're watching that on the film, and it flies past something that you might have spent weeks designing. What does that feel like?
yeah, it's definitely, I definitely want to like have it go slow mo or something.
Yeah.
You're just like, whoa, what was that? But even stuff in the big market, like it's so dense.
Yeah.
Like Mark saw the movie and is like, yeah, that thing you did was in there. I was like, I didn't see that. Where was that?
Yeah.
Like some of the shots for we did like hundreds of shops, all the weird little shops in there, and Mark saw all the stuff that I did that I didn't even see because it was too
Yeah.
fast for me. I need to wait for the DVD and just like kind of frame by frame. Kind of.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because of course it's so hard to plan what will end up in the final shots.
Sure.
And it's not just a dense frame, it's where the editing changes what happens. But if you don't make it rich and detailed, then you can sort of tell, can't you? So like,
Yeah.
even if you can't see the detail, it's important to have thought about the detail
Sure.
and do it. Yeah.
Yeah, like other films I worked on, like Elysium, like Neil's super into designing every little thing, and like it's always really satisfying to work on something like that where you can pause like any frame in the movie and like all of that is designed, and I think stuff like that really maybe stands the test of time more
Yeah.
than I've seen like really good films, but the level of design is very low, and you remember the story, but I wouldn't ever go back to look at
Yeah.
the designs in the movie, or so it's always kind of a trade-off or a balance. But
I really like that in the past 10 years, maybe even longer, there's a huge proliferation of art of books. Because it goes to show the audience how much time and thought has been put
Yeah.
into the work. Your work has clearly been featured in some of these over the years. And what I was going to ask you about them was, do you get a choice in what goes into those books at all?
No,
or-
not at all.
No. That's I think there's more and more of a recognition of how much goes into the design of these films lately. How do you feel about that? Because it's a good thing, of course, isn't it?
yeah, it's really cool. I mean, I think Valerian, especially, that was the first time that I've seen where the concept artists were like represented and put out front so
Yeah.
much. In the marketing, in some of the websites, it was just like, here are the concept artists that made this film, and in the credits of the film, it went. Luke had us like right behind him and the producer and Messier. It was just concept artists. I still haven't. I still am picking my jaw off the floor.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to have that happen because usually we're buried underneath catering and janitors and stuff, and
Yeah.
if we're lucky, you know. So it was really cool to see someone that you hear people tell you how much they respect the artist a lot over the years, and Luke did the same, and you're kind of like, yeah, I've heard that before. And then when you see that in the credits, you're like, okay, he really means it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see someone like that still exists in this industry.
Absolutely. Another sequence I loved in Valerian was when Valerian jumps through the planets, basically, with that special suit.
Sure.
And that's another one where everything flies by really quickly. But actually, that's part of the shot, really. You know, you do want to pause it and whatever.
Yeah.
So how challenging was that part to work on?
I was more involved in just designing some of the individual. He had that idea very early on too, where it was like he has to get to this place, and the fastest way is through just breaking through all the different isolated worlds that all these aliens had created on Alpha, and so it was really cool. He had all these different ideas, like there's this world and this one and this one, and just coming up with some different visuals for that was fun.
If anyone wants to rewatch that scene, which is some of those are clips on YouTube, can you remember any like little details that you put in there that people might not know about? Like Easter eggs? Or
I don't know
like
if there's anything in there, but there's definitely some in Big Market.
okay. Tell us about those.
There's some. I did a lot of. I tried to do something to memorialize Mobius, because I'm such a fan of his work, and him and Messier were actually kind of in school together as students, and they both worked on Fifth Element together, and so I was trying to get something in there. I don't think that made it, but there's definitely a couple Fifth Element things in there.
Come on, you got to tell me what it is.
Mark did one where, like the red guards, the Icon Cyrus, the big bad guy, his guards in the red suit. There was a scene after Valerian's running, and they're sitting at a bar, like drinking some beer or something, or alcohol, and the bar is called Corbin's.
Yeah.
So maybe Corbin has some sort of bar in the future at this market, and there's a few. If you pause the film and some of those fly-throughs, there should be a few like Corbin Taxi Service or Ruby Rod, or maybe a couple things advertising the diva. She's still singing operas in this world. I'm not sure. I definitely saw. I'm pretty sure I saw one of the Ruby Rod, but it's very. You have to really like pause and look for a few things.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if anything else made it through, but those were some that I tried to put in there. But again, it wasn't planned. I was just kind of like, wouldn't it be funny if? And I was like, Luke, is this okay? He's like, yeah, that should be okay.
I love it. I reckon people should talk more about that. It's a way to get people back in the cinema, you know, to rewatch it, or buy the Blu-ray where you can really.
Yeah, I think the Blu-ray will be. That's probably the only way to really, because I don't think the YouTube might not be high def enough. But it's crazy, like seeing where ILM took that. It's even more dense than I was even thinking, and it was really cool to see that.
Oh, cool. Well, it's been great talking to you about it, Ben. Thanks so much, man, for coming on. Appreciate it.